Energy is inherently a part of everything we do in our lives, but one of the least understood things.
I can see a future where there is limitless and free energy. And that's a pretty beautiful world to live in.
So, Rob, why tiramisu? What's it about the tiramisu?
It's just
because we also have a lot of desserts that come in our office for some reason. So I'm always curious on what the top leaderboard is.
It's just been my favorite, from early on. It's just one of those things, kind of like, eating, big family dinners, just going out. Like tiramisu is always the thing that, for whatever reason, I just love it. I'm not a huge sweet tooth. I don't really love the super sweet stuff. I don't really love like the super chocolatey stuff either. I love dark chocolate, like really raw dark chocolate, but I don't really dig like a lot of the sweet stuff. Tiramisu is just like this amazing blend. It's got that coffee, it's got that bitterness, but also has a little bit of sweet. It's just this incredible dessert, and it jacks me up. I don't do caffeine in any way. Like I don't drink tea. Like I've never drank coffee. I don't drink like caffeinated soda, Red Bull, anything like that. And so like if I have tiramisu, it jacks me up. Like I get jacked up when I have something that powerful, that much sugar, and a little bit of caffeine. I'm like, I can't sleep that night. Like it's just crazy.
I pegged you as a coffee drinker, just because like you're always come in with that energy. Derek, you're always having coffee, and so am I.
Yeah,
for
Derek,
sure.
What's your go-to?
What, dessert?
Yeah.
I'm with Rob. I'm not much of a sweet. I'm more of a savory guy. So desserts, like every once in a while, I'll kind of like get a craving for something. But I'm tough because like I don't have a go-to so much. Because I try to stay gluten free, and so most desserts are got some kind of flour in them, which kind of just can mess with my stomach sometimes and stuff. So. I think, if there's a go-to, it's probably cheesecake. The problem is that I had a great grandmother straight from Sicily. And there was a few things that she cooked, that like just made it impossible for me to enjoy them outside of hers, right? Ever again. I've learned how to make myself the bolognese that she made when I was a kid, and showed me how to make. I basically learned how to cook from her. Rob's had it,
Yeah, your bolognese is really...
Thanks, dude. Appreciate that. But the thing that I have not been able to mimic, there was two desserts, and cannolis and her cheesecake. Ooh. And her cheesecake was like this Sicilian / kind of New York, they lived in New York when they came to the States, and it's kind of your New York cheesecake, but really it was still rooted in the old world. And it was more of like she was just a ricotta. Everything was ricotta. Like there was no other cheese for like dessert. So the cheesecake had more of a ricotta vibe to it. It wasn't that sweet. It was like rich, and like like dense, but creamy and not really sweet. And so I can't have cheesecake where I'm not like, ugh, this is like too sweet. Like, what are you doing? And then cannolis, I've never found a cannoli ever. And maybe they exist in Brooklyn or something, but I've never found anything that even comes close. And and I'm with Rob. I'm not a chocolate guy. So most, desserts and sweets are like chocolate, and I'm not really a big chocolate guy. So I got to tell you that if I had a go-to that I could have pretty frequently, it would be tapioca pudding. And I know that sounds super silly to most people, but like that is my, like, I like tapioca pudding. Yeah. So,
guys, we got to go check out these guys' Death Box that just opened that pop-up. They do cannolis, and they're probably pretty insane.
I would guess that they're probably on point, dude. When are we going to walk down there? Let's go after work. Let's go today, dude.
They're not doing the lunch thing today, but they're doing it. I'm going down there tonight. They're open from 4 to 8. It's insane. It looks insane. The menu.
I might wander down there after work.
Yeah.
So yeah, the thing is, dude, is like, I think if you have, family that has some old world recipes that you grew up on, it can totally screw you up on other stuff. Like my mom used to make, because I grew up with, my dad was like this big, like self-sustainable kind of guy. Like we would fish on the weekends for our fish for the week. We raised rabbits, believe it or not, for food. I thought they were my pets until we ate them, right? And then we had this huge garden. Like he had a normal size yard, about a quarter acre, but yeah. But most of it was garden. Like we didn't have, like we had a little lawn, but most of it was just garden space. And so I was always working in the garden. So my mom would make and we had fruit trees, and my mom would make these apple pies from scratch with our apples. And so that's also one that kind of hits home for me, like a really good handmade apple pie that somebody knows what they're doing. That'll do it. But if I go out to a restaurant, I'm like, because I drink espresso all day most of the time, like I'll get an affogato, right? Like a really good, if you give me a really good gelato, vanilla gelato with a little bit of espresso over the top, like, and I tell them, I'm like, I want half the amount of gelato you normally give people. I just want like a tiny scoop with a little espresso on it and just sip that. That'll usually do it for me.
Yeah. That's Marilyn. My wife's, that's her go-to is affogato, and she'll just make them at home all the time. She's just, that's her thing.
The problem is though,
affogato too. It's incredible. And the homemade
problem for
ice
me
cream
that I found, dude, is that I actually apparently am like, I think I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine because like but it's weird. It takes me a fair amount to get going in the morning, but then if I have anything in the evening, it'll just keep me up all night. Like I just like I can't have, and so it's like one of those forbidden treats. Like I know that I'm going to be potentially tossing and turning from having it at night, but it's worth it sometimes.
I've been thinking about whether or not I should start. So, I did a little stint of like yerba mate a bunch of years ago, and
that's legit.
It's kind of cool, but then I just didn't really. I wasn't consistent.
Rob, you know what I think? If you were to get into, I think because you're such a foodie and you have a palate, like a sophisticated palate, I think you would really enjoy the new world coffees and just the craftsmanship of it. And where if you just got an espresso, because espresso, by the way, espresso has way less caffeine than most people think. Like I will have what my wife has. She gives me a hard time for having 3 espressos every morning, right? But she has 2 or 3 cups of black tea. The other day I had one of her black teas and I was like jittery, shaking, like freaking out.
I'm like, a lot of caffeine.
I'm like, you have way more caffeine than I do. And so I think, Rob, you'd be okay just sipping a good espresso, just like it's like warm, kind of cool way to start the day. You know what I mean? And that's what I like. I like my machine. I go through my whole little routine. It's less about getting jacked and more about just like this cool little thing that I look forward to every day. I do my prayer, meditation, reading, and then I have my espresso and I just, it's nice way to start the day.
Yeah, I do. I crave all of those things about it, and I am actually into it, even though I don't drink it. I love, I love it. I love the smell of it. I love buying different kinds of coffee.
And you can get into the whole world of like coffees, especially locally here, Bay Area. Like, dude, we have some of the best handmade coffee ever.
Oh, yeah.
And if you get a good machine and like you do it, yourself, like it's cool.
Oh, dude,
it's a fun thing.
And it's that culture. I knew the guys that started Intelligista in San Francisco.
Dude, that's one of the best.
Blue Ball, like it's just. Yeah, I love the culture around it. I love it all. I just have never drank it, but I'm thinking about starting. Maybe I will.
Was there a point in your life, Rob, where you had caffeine, let's say as in high school or something, where you were like, oh, this sucks. I hate this. I'm never doing this again. Or what made you just never get into caffeine?
I mean, I did as like a really young kid. I definitely drank a bunch of like Coca-Cola and like caffeinated beverages. Pop, lots of pop, lots of Coke, and like I definitely did that as a young kid. Not really much as a teenager. I think I did actually had a weird experience with coffee in my mid to late teens. I guess it was. I think it was still in high school. I remember, I didn't eat anything. Like I just woke up, whatever, one day. I didn't eat a lot or nothing. I didn't eat anything like all day, and then I drank this big cup of coffee from like Dunkin' Donuts or something. I was just out with my friends and I just pounded like a giant cup of like straight Dunkin' Donuts caffeinated coffee, and it messed me up. Like I was just destroyed,
I mean, I never had it until mid high school. I was taking a Spanish class and learning about coffee because I tasted coffee when I was growing up. You wanted to be an adult and you're like, yeah, I'll taste this coffee. And I was like, oh, this tastes disgusting. I don't want it. And then I learned about how coffee is grown and how it's cultivated and how it's crafted literally from the plant to the cherry to the cup. And I was like, you know what? Let's give this another shot. And I just tried black coffee on its own, no cream, no sugar. It was like Starbucks. It was burned and not very good, but I was like, man, I'm going to appreciate this no matter what. And as it got deeper, now it's kind of like Intelligentsia and Blue Bottle, you start to learn the craft. And you're like, oh, there's a craftsmanship here. There's an art here. And then there's a beautiful complexity to it. And Derek, to your point of like gardening a lot growing up, I think there's like this connection with the natural environment around us that I think fuels a lot of what we do. Because, for example, we had our company-wide meeting yesterday, and one of the things that I noticed was we had so much conversation around why we're all in line doing what we're doing. Like, we're all mission aligned with what we're trying to accomplish, why we're trying to accomplish it, the problem that we're solving, owning your power. Where does that come from both of you? Like, in terms of having that mission? Because Derek, you've mentioned your mission, your personal mission before. How does that play into what we do?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've always wanted to do work that, there's this like protect what you love idea, and for me, that's always been a driving force in everything that I've ever done is how am I, protecting the things that I love, the people that I love, the planet, the places, all of that. And so that's always been deeply motivational for me is making sure that my work aligns with that idea. And so, yeah, I mean, being able to celebrate things the way I was just talking about earlier, being able to celebrate all of us and bring us all together and enjoy the prosperity and the abundance of the world, and like seeing how that parallels in nature and the natural world around us, that beauty, that magnificence, that kind of like, I think it's really important that we do connect with the natural world around us, gives us that sense of um, sort of something bigger than us, right? I mean, it also mirrors that interconnectedness of all things that was also really important to me. Just being I mean, I don't know if anyone's really into astrology, but I am a Libra, and like I do have this like sense of balance that I'm always trying to achieve, and like the nothing's black and white to me. There's always gray areas, always this kind of like middle, and like and how everything interconnects and is interdependent on each other, and I think we see that in nature, and I think it's important for us to ground into it and to connect with it and to see it, so in order to do that, we need to protect it, and we can't like sully it, we can't destroy it, and so I think that drives a lot of what I do, and what I hope that we all kind of believe in.
Yeah, I come from maybe a slightly different entry point to the same. It's funny because 50. I don't know if it's this way for everybody. It seems like to some extent it can be, but it's been a very revealing, revelatory kind of moment in time for me this last 6 months of being 50. And it's interesting because just this is just last like 24 hours. I was really reflecting on what led me to where I'm at, because I had this interesting conversation with my younger son last night, who's 15, and we were discussing spirituality. And he's found, we were talking about somebody close to us, their child is having some real struggles with depression and, self-harm and things like that. And we were talking to my son about what that looks like from his perspective around his peers and so on. And then what his experience has been like. And he came right out and said, it's my faith. Like, I have a faith in a higher power. And we kind of kept going. And there's some family background in religion, but it's never been put upon him. We've never like dragged him to church or anything like that. It's been this just like self kind of propagated kind of awareness for him. And as I peeled back the layers and where he's coming from on it, it was a true authentic spirituality with regard and reverence to, some of the major figureheads of major religions, but an unpacking of that to understand who these figures really were, and less about the religion and the structure and more about what it was they were saying and where that was coming from. And so it caused me to like, we got into a conversation where I started talking about like, this understanding of the deep connection that we have with source, right, as human beings, and that we are all just fractalizations of this source energy, and that we're all connected. And I'd use the analogy of like, take the ocean as source. You take a drop out of that ocean. Is that drop water the ocean itself? No, there's the ocean, but it is all the parts, components, and makeup of the ocean, right? Mm-hmm. And I was using that analogy. And so we were going into this conversation, and it furthered into me basically just being able to describe my spiritual practice to my son in a way that I think he understood at a deeper level than ever before. And what I was kind of touching on was this, I got into like the law of reciprocity, and things like that, where it's this, understanding that you are creating the reality around you in this, interconnectedness, as Rob was talking about, that you are a part of what it is that you want to see. What you focus on expands and becomes your present reality. And the idea that what you the old saying that you reap what you sow, but I was explaining that to my son in a deeper context. And so I went back to thinking when I was young, like, what led me to this? I didn't just wake up one day saying I want to lead an organization, or I want to start something, or I want to start a movement, or I want to be a part of this bigger change. Like I had those like kind of feelings, but I didn't know what that looked like. And really what it was born from is the idea that I really seek to serve. Like that is really the core of who I am, is waking up every day saying, how can I serve? And that being my mission at its baseline. Like, what does service look like? And what does the highest order of service look like to the most people possible? And that means that I have to pour back into myself so I have the capacity to serve. It means that I have to check myself, my ego, and I have to look very carefully, self-inspection and reflection on, like, how am I showing up for that, that job that I'm committing myself to? And that was born out of the idea that I was seeking what, if I believe, and I really do, that the fabric of the universe, that source is just truly just love. It is this energy that is love, right? And so I was doing this like deep, kind of intellectual process of trying to uncover what is love in action. Like what is the verb tense of love, right? And through hours and hours of meditation and thinking about this, the only thing I can land on was love in action is service. It is just, if you look at nature, everything is in some form of service to itself, to each other, to itself. And if you really look at the greatest function that we can have as human beings is to be in that form of service, which is just the expression of love in its many different ways, right? And so the idea that the kind of the concept that if I help enough people get what they want, I will end up with what it is that I want, which most of the time I don't even know what that really is. It just shows up, right? And so I think that, yes, there's definitely lots and lots of things that came along the way that lined us up to what this company represents and the mission that we're on, the three of us and so many more with us, that is so important to the world. But it's born for me out of this kernel that is like, how can I be in the flow of source energy, which I believe to be love, and what does that look like? And it requires that I seek to serve. And then that means that I have to do some real self-reflection to understand what is it that the universe blessed me with that is my uniqueness, my superpowers, and how do I take and just be okay with that, be okay with my weaknesses, and be okay with whatever those talents are, and how do I maximize that for the most good? And that's where this company, that's really where it came from, right? And then it's by being in that modality, you're attracting others. Like Rob comes from New York to San Francisco, from San Francisco to Santa Cruz going, this feels like the right spot for me to live my mission, right? And it was just because I think the intention was pure, right? Like, how do we serve? And this thing's taken on different forms and market approaches and so on, but it's all based in that one fundamental thing, which is how can the smallest number of people have the biggest impact for the most people? That max min theory, right? Which is just an optimization on efficiency. It's just like, and that's the other part of this. It's just how do you become highly efficient to where it's not all just words. We're actually doing stuff and it's inspiring. And yeah, so that's where it comes from for me. That was a pretty winding road. Sorry about that.
So it makes me think a lot about the fact that we talk about release of control, whether that be energy going out in the market, kind of this idea of sovereignty over your own power. At what stage do you kind of have to or learn to let go of control in building an organization? Because you have a vision of where you want to take it and how you want it to achieve, but like,
great question.
The day-to-day totally changes how that works. And it's kind of an all-out assault on it. So how do you address that? Like letting go of like, let's let this organic thing go. And Derek, you mentioned in the past like that it's like an organism. Mm-hmm. But even then, there's a certain level of like, I got to give it attention, yet let it thrive.
I'm going to try to keep this really brief because I'd love to hear Rob's take on it too. But it's just that there's this. It's a reframing of the idea of control. So on one hand, we all have our perspective on what control means, that word, right? And instead of thinking that things need to be controlled, I think what made it easier for me is to go back to or really root myself in the idea of inspiring. Right. So you can inspire, and then therefore you don't need control because you're inspiring, you're instigating, you're kind of, setting the tone for what is, no matter where it goes, it's in the right direction. And so when you're afraid, I think that control often comes from a fear. And I don't believe that any decision should be made from a place of fear. And we all do it. And I do it all the time. But I'm always reminding myself not to make decisions from a place of fear. Because what happens with control is you're afraid that the outcome, that you know better than the universe what the outcome should be. Whereas if you go to the other side of the equation, and you look at it from a standpoint, how do we inspire the idea that then let the universe take it? And that includes people, and that includes methodologies, and that includes, and if you continue to inspire, you can kind of guide from the back of the bus, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to controlling from the front of the bus. And again, that's a little abstract, but that's the way I see it. So to me, it's not this like, oh, I've had to have that conversation many times in my career. I got to let go of control. Like I need to let go. Right. And there are times when you need to maybe steer the bus a little bit more than others. But in general, I think that people are afraid to let go of control because they're still stuck in a fear-based kind of scarcity mindset that says, I think I know what the outcome needs to be, as opposed to just being in a faith-based mindset, an abundance mindset that says the universe, source, love, whatever that thing is that you want to call God, is going to manifest this thing as it should be. And it knows way better than I ever could. And so all my job is to do is to inspire people on a mission that is headed just in some direction that looks like true, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the idea of control is really somewhat of an illusion, right? I mean,
yeah.
That's, I think, the thing. And I think real leadership, I think you have a choice as a leader in do you use control to lead, or more like manage and like through fear, because you can create control to some extent through fear. But if you let go of that idea, or you don't believe in that, and that's kind of antithetical to the way that I know that Derek and we think about leading people, is, it's not a control, it's an inspiration, it's a leading, it's a guidance, it's an advisory, it's not, I don't want to control people by telling them what to do, and like what, it's just more, it's like inspiring them in the way that we do things and the way that we lead, that, leading them. And that does create somewhat of a control. It's like a steering, we're kind of giving them a lane or to run in, or, like a path, but you really got to allow great people to do great things when it comes down to it. And controlling them is only going to hinder them. And you really don't ever have that control unless you're doing it through fear, and you don't want to do that. So I think, that's kind of the way I think about it. And I think that leads, in the discussions we've had before about, like giving people control over their own lives. They've always had it, but because the overarching paradigms have kind of given them this sense of fear about things and a sense of scarcity, we're just helping them understand that and recognize that there is abundance, that they do have energy, they do have power, right? And we're showing them how to access it. We're not saying, hey, you shouldn't do that, you should do this. We're saying, hey, why not look at your options? Why not think about the fact that you can do all these different things? These are all available to you. You have the control to make your own decisions. That's the control you have. Your own control over your own decisions. And that's the only real control there ever is. And so I think I'm all about like inspiring people to take back that control and understand that they have it.
Yeah. Reminding people of their agency. They're the thing that's interesting to me, if you look back from an anthropomorphic viewpoint of, where did kings come from? And there's a distinction, right? Because we had shaman, and we had these guiding forces of groups of people, and we had this collection of, and if you look at some really indigenous kind of the remnants that still exist, where you can see how some of that function of groups worked, without this like authoritarian concept. And it was largely done by somebody that had vision, right? Somebody had vision or could kind of give you a viewpoint on what the future or what the tribe needed or where we should move to or whatever, or how we should be seeing each other, ourselves, and this kind of visionary inspiration thing. And then you had probably a consortium of a few of elders that would kind of maybe break that down into more granular understanding for other folks, and then it was a collective of like, what is our mission? And I think where control is needed is when there's not a vision for what the mission is, right? What is the thing that we live for or stand for? What is our belief structure? And so where you see heavy authoritarianism is because there was a breakdown in a commonality. And I've been really preaching this a lot, specifically to my kids, to spend more time on the sameness than on the difference. And I think right now the world is telling us to spend all of our time and attention around what's different, the differences between us and things, versus what I think we used to do, or maybe the innate function of humans at their best is when we're really working and collaborating from the samenesses. And so I think that from a standpoint of letting go of control is more of like, yes, you're inspiring people or maybe you're shedding light on the possibilities, as Rob was kind of alluding to there. But then you're also inspiring them that they have what they're needed. There are people that like to lead and there are people that don't like to lead, but that doesn't mean that their opinion and their take on things isn't just as valuable. I know from my process as being a vision person, inspiration person, is that I need that feedback. I need that like reverberation. It's like that. It feels like sonar to me. Like that's the way I would describe it. I'm putting things out there that I think sometimes get mistaken as like, oh, that's the law. That's what we're going to do. And I'm like saying it just to see what people's reaction is like. And then that kind of informs an adjustment that I might need to make on that vision, or that idea. So I think it's getting back to the collective intelligence that does exist that we have forgotten. And that there is this interconnectedness, there is this interdependency, there is this, individual agency that can turn into this incredibly powerful thing when people are aligned. And so I'm always seeking, what does alignment look like? How do we get some version of alignment within the organization that basically just looks like, are we kind of marching towards the same high level goal?
Was there an inflection point for either one of you where you kind of recognize that, there's multiple paths we can take in most areas of life, where there was like, I can take control of the situation or I can let go and see what happens? I would imagine you both have met that fork in the road. What was it like navigating that fork?
I have two big examples that come to mind. One, I first started leading groups in my early days of business, and it wasn't going great. And I was like, what's wrong? Right. And it was that I was telling people what to do as opposed to asking what they thought and then having a dialogue, a suggestion. Okay, that sounds great. And how about this? And the other thing that came out of that struggle was that I realized that I needed to lead by example. I had to be the example of what I hoped others could do in our organization. And that stuck with me. Like, you gotta be the thing. You gotta act and show up in a way that you would like others to, first and foremost. You can't be telling people to do something that they don't see you doing or thinking or behaving, right? And so it became more of a wanting to first understand versus being understood, right? And that was helpful. And then the second was when I had a full-blown misstep in leadership where I completely blew it for a period of time and lost all sense of what my center, right? And it became, I got to see the ugliest side of personality defects and of ego run wild, and it was all basically a mental breakdown, and I give myself some level of compassion now. And it was actually one of the best things that could ever happen to me. But seeing what the dark side of being in a position of so-called power or leadership, if you're not really tuned in, it can go really bad really quickly. And it gave me an idea of like a viewpoint on how we see corporate America go so bad, and And so a letting go sometimes is necessary for your own sanity, is I guess where I'm going with that. And so I came up close and personal to something I never experienced before, which is a requirement to let go to even be able to maintain sanity, like true sanity, like mental health, like real, like, am I going to make it through this kind of saying? I had to let go and trust that there was a bigger force, that there was a collective intelligence, that there was a beauty behind things if you just let people go and let the idea go and take on some of its own form. And so, yeah, I mean, my experience, these experiences were like painful, but very educational and very evolutionary, right, in nature. And just going, oh, the more you make it about what you can either be a conduit for whatever's going on, or you can think that you're it. And if you think you're it, it won't last long.
That's good. I'm thinking of a bunch of different things. Well, that's something that just popped into my head was this. Like I mentioned, my son plays football, and that was not something that my wife and I ever thought would be a thing. We definitely did not. We're not. You wouldn't pin us as football parents, by any means. And so a couple of years ago, or I mean, he's always been an athlete, our son, and he's always been a great athlete and been into a lot of sports and whatnot. And played flag football, which is fine. But when he first started getting into actual, like real physical, full contact football, we were definitely like, whoa, this is heavy. Like, are we really gonna let him play? Like, do we want to control him? Do we want to tell him he can't do it? And that was a big deal. And we ultimately decided to let him play and accept the reality of it. And because it was so meaningful for him and his evolution and his just being a human, like, I mean, it's what he loved to do. And his friends, and he had this group of friends that he'd been playing sports with, and that camaraderie, that team, that kind of that collective, you don't get that really many places anymore, especially in the youth. And like Derek was just mentioning, like his son, and we have some people that are really close to us that are dealing with that with their teens, and having that, we just agree that was more important than really anything else. That he was with the people that he felt comfortable with, that he was doing something bigger than him. He was part of something. He loved doing it. It was also, it is a physical sport. It is a violent sport. And I kind of have a little bit of a, like, I feel like maybe we're getting a little soft. Humanity, we're getting a little spoiled. We're getting a little soft, right?
Yeah.
So like, put them out there, like get a little struggle, have a little pain, like get out there and like get beat up. I think it's important. Like, I think it connects you to the physical reality that we all live in. I mean, the universe is a violent place. Nature is a violent place. Mm-hmm. The ocean is a violent thing. And so I think being connected in that way physically, we just got to agree, like, hey, this is actually a good thing. And then it's become, and we talk about it all the time now, and we're always like, wow, we really have a son that's like, he's the starting fullback in the high school football team. It's like crazy. And we're going to these games and root for him, and we're seeing his friends get smashed and getting hurt, and it's crazy. And we're worried about his brain and his head injuries, but we're also seeing him like grow into be this incredible human. And he's learning so much about how to live and how to be, right? Like things that he will not get from scrolling on his screen or even in the classroom. Like, he is learning things that you will not get anywhere else. And that's something that we've had to just accept and let go. And look what it's done. It's become this amazing thing for all of us.
So you're touching on so many things that I think are really important for people to understand. I've got a lifetime of training for martial combat, right? Like truly, like most of my life has been spent, a lot of time being spent in training for for violence, right? And yet that is total, like violent, like, like I absolutely am committed to not hurting anybody, and part of the idea is the security, like if you look at history, like there's almost never, at least my understanding of history, there's never been a time where certainly men didn't train in some, didn't compete in some physical way that looked like violence, right?
Yeah.
Or train or practice in some form, whether it was ritual or whether it was just, it's an innate part of, I think you're right. It teaches you a lot about yourself, right? To be in situations that are difficult, painful, violent. It also gives you, when I walk away from a bunch of grown men trying to strangle me for an hour on the jujitsu mats, the rest of the world is like a different place. It's just like you just have a different context. And I think it's important. And I think, Rob, to your point, we've, as a society, made that somehow, we've demonized that to some extent, that like we're practicing violence. And I'm like, yet we can't get away from that. Because if you notice to this point, like the fact that we don't provide that as part of our bringing up of young people, they do end up in self-harm, or they do end up in an echo chamber of a conversation that's not healthy internally, right? And by getting that energy out and making it an okay thing to get that energy out there and do that, I think it's very, very healthy. And so I think you're right. And soft, it sounds like we're kind of beating people up for being soft. We do have a society that's all about convenience, but I think that there's something to be said for the fact that we have always, as a species, had environmental pressures. Things that caused us to face life and death, health and wellness. How do we feed our family tonight? We got to go kill that elk so we can feed people. Otherwise, we're going to starve, or whatever it is. We have removed essentially almost all environmental pressure. So now we need to find way. And by the way, environmental pressures causes evolution. It causes breakthroughs. It causes growth. Right? We know that we grow through challenge. And so we need to find these healthy environments to go get that out there. And you're right, Rob. There's some risk to playing football. But does it outweigh the risk to not playing football, right? And like some of the highest achieving people I've ever met in my life were really star football players, right? Some of the most fundamentally balanced, emotionally balanced people I've ever met are MMA fighters that like literally train day in and day out with somebody trying to kill them. And they are the most calm, mentally stable, centered people out there. And so I don't know, there's something there. I mean, it's a whole other episode that, I've got a lot of theory on, but like, dude, it's real. And so that's rad, Rob, because like you guys do live this super peace-centered kind of lifestyle. And
I mean, like,
to have a son out there playing, playing football is surprising, but it's really cool that you guys got to that point of understanding that for him, it was necessary. That's who he is. Let him fly,
Let him fly.
Well, I think we forget that Socrates was a wrestler.
Totally, dude. Totally.
And it's like this, you always had this balance. And I don't know. I have my view on this, but I'm curious from your side. Like, do you think it's essential that everybody goes through some sort of monumental challenge, so to speak, where the fear sets in, you have to make peace with that fear rather than always, a fearful reaction? Do you think that's a necessary step to reaching what we believe is our highest
true potential? I don't know everybody. I think
whatever that scale is, by the way, it could be in whatever fear is in their mind. It doesn't have to be going out on a football field trying to get.
I think that if you don't actively seek existential crisis, either psychologically, some people might be going on a heavy psilocybin trip, where you can have the full dissolution of ego, the sense of self in a couple hours. You know what I mean? Like if you're not seeking out some existential, or like the idea, like for me, that there's some 200-pound dude on my back trying to choke me to sleep, right? Like if you don't create that, trust me, the universe is going to create that circumstance for you. I think it is a part of human evolution. And so whether it's watching your father die in front of you, where you have this existential moment where you have to come to grips with the reality of impermanence of life, or whether it's through, these things are going to come up, right? And I think the more you prep for them, the more that it's part of our conversation with our youth, the more that we're imposing that on ourselves. Like I like to spend time, and it's kind of a Buddhist practice, but spend time really, really, really getting closely acquainted with what if everything that I hold so near and dear that I think makes me who I am didn't exist, went away? What if the business blew up and my family left me? And like, what would I be left with? And spending some time on that, to get that that I think it's important, you know, and I think there's, to your point, there's scale and steps and different for everybody, but I think we should be actively pursuing. And one simple way to do it is to get out there on a football field and get smashed, right? Or to go train, go train jujitsu or whatever it is. And some of it might be an Ironman, like you, Steve, where you're pushing yourself beyond what you believe possible physically. And some of it may be actually just getting into deep meditation and really questioning, who am I really? Like, ask that question repeatedly. Who am I? Who am I? Not this voice asking the question, what's behind that? What is the consciousness? And then you start to move into like, oh, this little meat suit is not really me. But I do think that some version of that existential kind of crisis question is definitely important.
Yeah.
And I'm younger than both of you guys, but like I've noticed it sometimes when I meet some people a little bit younger than me, because I've gone through existential crisis stuff too, where you're kind of, and it'll keep coming, because that's part of it. But you can almost tell when someone has had one versus when they have not. It's almost like a difference in how they carry themselves into conversations or their openness to situations. It's I don't know how to best explain it, but I've like seen that happen where I'm like, oh, got it. And like even when you meet with someone who also has had an existential crisis like that, you kind of understand the world a little bit differently.
I think it should be a practice personally. Like, I think it should be an ongoing thing, that creating that environmental pressure, that stress. I don't think it's good to be in fight or flight. Like, I think that I don't think that's a healthy place. That I think this society, as it is, keeps us in fight or flight mode, which is the sympathetic nervous system is just firing, and I don't think that's healthy. And I think we need breath work and things like that to get back into the parasympathetic nervous system kind of engagement. That said, these practices like, that we're talking about can help you, like, it's one of the first things I teach in jiu-jitsu when I'm teaching is how to maintain breath in the midst of what feels like, your life being threatened. How do you maintain breath and stay conscious and aware and in the parasympathetic, process? And it's typically tied to breath. It's one of the first things I teach, because if you don't have that, you can't learn anything, because you're just in fight or flight. You're not absorbing information. And I think that we spend a lot of time protecting our kids from this. Like, we spend a lot of time protecting our youth from having the experience of crisis or, fear that has to be dealt with. And I notice it, to your point, everywhere where you go, this is too big a deal for you. Like, what's occurring right now, this conversation or this thing that popped up, it's having way too big an impact on you. Like, that doesn't need to be necessary. That's not necessary. If you were facing this in your own way, in a practice, then when these things pop up in life, you're just like, no big deal. We got this, And so I think that we have definitely sought comfort, and we've tried to protect our youth from having to deal with real subject matter. And then now we're seeing this huge, like, problem of self-harm and and depression and suicide, suicidal ideations and things. I don't know, because I'm not a psychologist, if they're that connected, but it sure seems like there's some connection there. Yeah.
I think there definitely is a connection. And there's a connection in the disconnect, right? Like, they're disconnected from like physical reality, tangible things that could force them to think about those existential things in a real way, not this like made up kind of like fear and keeping them in this fight or flight mode. The idea is not to keep them in fight or flight mode, but there should be moments in your life where you do have to consider those things, and you should have that perspective. And you lose that if you're always coddled and safe, and you don't have any like externalities that are impacting you, and you don't have to worry. Like, then you never have that perspective. Like you said, Steve, that you never have that experience where you are forced to think about those things. So generally younger people have less of that, but it's not true across the board.
Well, it's certainly not true worldwide. I think we're speaking to America, right?
There's kids that are incredibly privileged, fortunate part of the world. And so there's harder to find those things here. Another reason why I thought, just get them out there, play football, like freaking.
There's a saying that I heard early days when I was a young kid in my studying Okinawan karate, and the saying was, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than it is to be a gardener in a war. And that hit me at such a deep level. Like, be prepared for the challenges, but be hopeful and expect peace, right? Like, it's better to be prepared. And so I also believe that when it comes to, like, I'm using the metaphor of like martial arts training, but that's just because I know it so well. I can tell you that those that know that they have the capacity for extreme violence tend to be the ones that are the least violent in what would normally be. So when you see somebody on the street freaking out and there's road rage and they're screaming at each other, that rarely happens with somebody that's actually trained in combat, right? Because they're just like, this isn't real. Like, this isn't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not. And so I think that that's a metaphor for the broader context, which is preparing for the challenges that life brings us invariably in different ways, in our upbringing, in our existence, in our ongoing practice, is so helpful in recognizing the challenges as they arise that aren't really that big a deal, or that you actually expect that they're going to arise in your life, as opposed to being shocked and in that fight or flight, that reactive state when some little thing comes up that could be easily managed if you were just like centered in like you have the capacity to deal with it.
Yeah.
Nice. Well,
yeah, good stuff.
Seriously, on that note, I know we kind of went off the rails of talking energy and things, but I think it was what I really liked about this conversation, and what I hope to bring going forward in the show, is just this idea that we're also people just chasing this goal, this effort that we have internally at a company is one thing, but we're all on a personal mission at the same time. And I think remembering that in how we just navigate our day-to-day lives is super important. And I just want to showcase that part of the reason why we're doing the work that we're doing at MYNT is because of the way that we navigate our personal lives, and the way that you guys kind of lead the company and kind of say, hey, here's a way to think about things, and let you guys walk the path and develop. So yeah, definitely we'll bring more of it for sure. But it is excellent episode.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for
it's awesome, Steve. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. I think it totally speaks to the idea of like, owning it, owning your power. Like that is what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about.
It's very true.
Yep.
I also resonate with that, Steve, because I'll watch, like, somebody like a very, a business leader that I really respect and admire for what they've done in business. And oftentimes they're being interviewed just talking about the business and how the business functions and what they did and the decisions they made and whatever. But there's always a part of me that's like, well, how'd that person become the person that could do that, right? Like, what's behind that? Like, I want to know that story. And I think you exploring that here with Rob and I is powerful, because I think people want to go, like, what makes a company show up the way it shows up? Well, it definitely starts with the leadership, the people that kind of created the thing and continue to create for the thing. What drives them? Like, who are they as people? Because that's really informative. Because I think that you got to first be it before you can do it. You got to become the thing, you got to live it, breathe it, think it, see it before it actually manifests into reality. And I think that that's something that's important for people, is like hearing what some of these thought processes are that make you able to conceive of like how to change energy for humanity. Like, what ingredients went into that cake, right? Yeah.
100%. All right. Well, thank you.
Cool.
Till next week.
Thanks, guys.
Power of people.
Energy is inherently a part of everything we do in our lives, but one of the least understood things.
I can see a future where there is limitless and free energy. And that's a pretty beautiful world to live in.